Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Karmic Gacha system in Modern Family World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 371, SNL Part 2. General POV. Before I sang the song, I needed the help of the studio audience. Edward requested of the crowd before the filming began. When the cues arrive, I need you guys to clap your hands 6 times in a row. Let's practice, he said as he taught them the cues. Max, Caroline, Vanessa, and even the other SNL cast members all learned the cues from him. Here, everyone take one. The staff members handed out special items to the crowd. The crowd waited excitedly for the song part of the show to begin. Finally, Edward stood on the stage with a synthesizer beside him. The spotlight fell on him. Wearing a microphone and white gloves, Edward pressed a button on the synthesizer and played the beat for the song. The opening beat featured a prominent hand clap pattern on beats 2 and 4, along with a bass line and sampled soul horns. As the beat started, a group of dancers with white gloves and blue jumpsuits entered the stage from behind Edward. The dancers clapped to the beat while Edward smiled at the audience. He posed like Elvis and shouted, "Turn it up!" The dancers spread out beside him, making Edward the center of the choreography. With a mesmerizing voice, Edward became the bane of every negative emotion as he began to sing.
Somebody save your soul, cause you've been sinning in the city. I know too many troubles, all these lovers got you losing control. You like a drug to me, a luxury, my sugar and gold. I want the good life every good night, you're a hot one to hold.
Edward moved to the left side of the stage as he sang, with the dancers moving together with him. As the refrain arrived, Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, Fred Armisen, and Jason Sudeikis, the backbone of the pre-2012 shows, lined up side by side and stood still with stoic faces, hiding their hands behind their backs. Edward joined the line, bringing the spotlight with him as the background dancers went behind the comedians. He sang,
"Cause you don't even know."
Edward finally sang the cues.
"I can make your hands clap."
The dancers showed only their hands, wearing white gloves from behind the comedians, and clapped on the beats. The crowd inside the studio also clapped together without missing a beat, making for an amazing performance. Edward looked at the comedians seriously and sang,
"I can make your hands clap."
The comedians finally smiled and clapped together with the dancers, all of them also wearing white gloves. Then, they danced comedically. As Edward entered the second verse, he walked back slowly to the center of the stage. He danced with the dancers in perfect choreography, mesmerizing the audience, both live and those tuning in on TV.
Somebody save your soul, cause you've been sinning in the city. I know too many troubles, all these lovers got you losing control. You like a drug to me, a luxury, my sugar and gold. I want your sex and your affection when they're holding you close.
The SNL producer's hand shook as he received the news from the staff member. 10.5 rating? We never broke out of 7 last season, and the season before that, and the one before that. Sir, the ratings are still climbing. Right now, 10.5% of all the households in the country are tuning into the show, the staff said excitedly. The producer became lightheaded and fainted at the control panel. Edward hurried to the right side of the stage where Keenan, McKinnon, Colin, and Andy Samberg were lining up. The dancers went behind them, and the routine on the left side of the stage repeated itself.
"Cause you don't even know. I can make your hands clap." Said I can make your hands clap.
Edward crooned,
"Every night when the stars come out, am I the only living soul around? Need to believe you could hold me down, cause I'm in need of something good right now. We could be screaming till the sun comes out, and when we wake we'd be the only sound.
bass line and sampled soul horns returned. The catchy beats made the entire crowd shake their bodies, and even some audiences watching on TV started dancing. Every comedian gathered with Edward on stage and danced together in perfect choreography, even though it was an easy dance that took them a whole day to learn. "Who's James Brown?" Luke asked as his mind was confused. His body, however, was dancing. Jay reminisced and answered the question for him. "He was the godfather of funk." The audience stood up and applauded. Gloria and Cam had begun to dance back at their house. Sheldon regretted tuning in. Now the song was going to be stuck in his head all day. Edward started sweating and smiled at the comedians as they rushed off the stage after the dance session ended.
My flesh is searching for your worst and best, will never deny. I'm like a stranger, give me danger, all you're wrong and you're right. Secrets on my way to the freeway, you're a keeper of crime. Still no conviction, grips of wrath can only sweeten your wine.
Edward cued the audience, and the camera zoomed out, showing the entire crowd.
But you don't even know, I can make your hands clap.
Everyone raised their hands, showing the white gloves they were wearing. The TV audience was really surprised when they saw it. Everyone clapped together in perfect harmony.
Said I can make your hands clap.
Edward smiled in satisfaction. The camera zoomed back to him, and he sang seriously as he danced at the center of the stage.
Every night when the stars come out, am I the only living soul around? Need to believe you could hold me down, 'cause I'm in need of something good right now. We could be screaming till the sun comes out, and when we wake we'd be the only sound. Get on my knees and say a prayer, change round.
He stopped abruptly and said,
That I can make your hands clap.
The bass line and sampled soul horns made another comeback, and it turned into a chaotic dance session on stage with the comedians jumping back in. Edward made ad-libs to the song as the pre-recorded vocals played out. He crooned. He danced with Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon. Everyone stopped abruptly and faced the camera together. Edward sang solo. The audience was silent for a few seconds before they broke into a maniacal, thunderous applause. 11.5! The spike broke all the ratings SNL ever had, the producer said feverishly. They broke the records on NBC, surpassing the finale of Friends, which was at 10.4, Seinfeld at 10.4, Cheers at 10.5, The Tonight Show at 11, and only lost to the finale of a long-running series, ER, which was at 12. The old man bit his finger as the commercial break returned. The last part of the show was the sketches, however Edward wasn't in any of it. The ratings hadn't solidified yet, and it could drop when the show's over. Even now at the commercial it had dropped to below 9. Cut the sketches in half, then bring him back for the finale. That's the only way for us to get an above 10 overall rating. If that happens, then a new breath will be injected to SNL. Singing, or even sketches. The producer read the prepared comedic sketches, not realizing the little note on the paper. Swap out Bill Sudeikis, let Newgate take his role. He's not recontracting anyway. The staff hesitated. The producer turned to her angrily and said, "What are you standing around for? We don't have much time. Go now." The staff wanted to tell him that changing the roles right now would be risky. Not to mention Edward had already carried half of the show. Suddenly shoehorning him into the sketches could create a bad impression on Edward and resentment from the comedians that worked hard to write the sketch. She reached Jason and panted heavily, but she kept talking despite not having sufficient breath. The boss wants to let Newgate do me, I meant more. Replacing you in the next skit. Oh, we can't do any changes to the next skit, Jason said casually, not bothered at all. Why not? The staff asked, finally catching her breath. It's pre-recorded. See. He peeked at her paper and showed her the notes. But Eddie is still in the clip, so you don't have to worry about it. The staff breathed in relief, but her excitement didn't last long. So he picked me to kick out, huh? Glad to know I'm no longer welcomed here, even though you guys begged for my help. The staff felt awkward and quietly made her way back to the boss's office. As the commercial ended, it was time for the comic sketches. It was the final part of the show. Weekend updates with Seth Meyer usually closed the show, but Seth was still away. It brought a lot of opportunities for the comedians to showcase their abilities with the extra time allotted to their shows. The first show was an in-house sketch about diabetes intervention, Studio C. Keenan, Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, Kirsten Wiig and Kate McKinnon jumped on the stage, which was an ordinary kitchen with a dining table. As Bill entered the house, he saw that his friends were in distress. Hey guys, what's going on? First of all, Bill, we want you to know that we are all your friends here, Keenan said comfortingly. Bill panicked immediately and grabbed Keenan's shoulder. Has something bad happened? Did they cancel Downton Abbey? The crowd laughed at Bill's performance. Kirsten held a black medical pouch and said tearily, No, Bill. We found this in your car. Oh, thank goodness. I thought I lost that, Bill Hader said in relief. So, you're not even going to pretend it's not yours? Andy Samberg asked, betrayal in his tone. Should I? Bill was confused. Bill, we opened it, Kate said after taking a deep breath, acting as if it was a big revelation. Okay, Bill said flatly. Kate continued. And we saw what was inside. I assumed that when you said you opened it, Bill quipped, earning laughs from the audience. We found needles and drugs, Kirsten said tearily again. Yes. It is a pouch to hold that stuff, Bill said flatly again, not finding the faults the others were desperately trying to show him. Samberg became desperate, holding his head as he said, God, how long has this been going on? Since I was a teenager, Bill replied casually. Kirsten approached Bill and took out a vial from the pouch, squinting her eyes as she read the label. Bill, you're addicted to this insulin. What? Okay, I don't know how you guys didn't know this, but I have diabetes. Bill laughed it off, thinking that everything would be normal once he told them his condition. Keenan rolled his eyes and threw his hands up. Matt, we can't have a serious conversation if you're just going to make up words. The crowd burst into laughter again. Bill became urgent. Diabetes is a real word. It's a metabolic disease. Andy crossed his arms together and mocked Bill. Oh yeah, okay. I know all about your disease. You're at some party and the guys are passing around the insulin, and you just can't say no, Bill said with concern. Have you been to a party? That doesn't happen. Insulin is expensive. The skits continued for a while, earning a lot of laughs from the audience. The friends revealed to Bill that in order to help him quit, they flushed his insulin down the drain. We're going to help you get through this, Bill. You can beat this, Andy said seriously. Usually when he acted dumb, he made exaggerated facial expressions and weird tones of voice to show the audience he was dumb. But in the sketch, he kept his seriousness, which made the audience laugh even more. Keenan told Bill as they all circled around him. Hey, don't you worry, buddy. We're going to stay right here to make sure you don't call your dealer. You mean a pharmacist? Bill said with disbelief. Keenan retorted again. So that's what they're calling them these days. Bill rushed away from his friends to grab a phone by the kitchen counter. Look, in a very removed way, I am grateful for your concern. But, in a more important and life-threatening way, I am very upset with you guys. You're completely ignorant about a very prevalent disease. Wait, who are you trying to call? Are you trying to score some insulin from your pharmacist? Keenan accused him. No, I'm calling an ambulance. Because I'm going to need one soon, Bill said urgently. Why? Kirsten asked. Because my pancreas don't make insulin, Bill said, increasing his tone of voice slightly, but he didn't shout at his friends. We know, Bill. The pancreas is a useless organ, Kirsten responded, acting as if Bill was changing the topic. Why, you're thinking of the appendix. Bill tried to argue. Kirsten cried, saying, No, the appendix is the thing at the back of textbooks. She went into Andy's arms and he gave her a comforting hug. The crowd burst into laughter at the wordplay and Edward felt satisfied as he was the one who wrote the sketch. He never watched the sketch by Studio C before in his previous world. It was just something he thought of while working with the cure for the disease. Bill was visibly shaken. I'm going to freak out. Okay, listen, we understand that you're angry, but we love you too much to let you do this. Friends don't let friends take, insurance, Kirsten told him. Everyone was supporting him, holding his hands to give him strength. Bill sighed as he waited for the phone to connect. The responder, Jason Sudeikis, answered. 911 emergency. Yes, hi. I need paramedics to come with an insulin shot because my well-meaning friends didn't know I have diabetes, and they flushed my insulin down the toilet, Bill said calmly. Jason paused for a bit before saying, Sir, we can't help you if you're going to make up words. The crowd applauded for the sketch as it ended. Edward said goodbyes to the audience, thanking SNL for inviting him, and then left the stage as the last sketch played on the big screen. The title of the sketch was The Killer Is Just Not That Into You. Search YouTube for both of the sketch. In the dim light of the forest, intense music played as the group of friends sprinted through the trees, panting heavily. Edward shouted to the group. Hurry! He's getting closer! Behind them was a scary man in a mask, chasing after them while snarling. Kate McKinnon screamed, running desperately as she struggled. He's right behind me! She began to cry as she heard the scary growling of the masked man. However, the masked man ran right past her and went for Keenan, who was in front of her. She widened her eyes in confusion, but she didn't stop running. The audience laughed at the uncanny situation and was fully invested in the story, especially since they knew Edward was the one writing it. Edward shouted desperately as he watched his friend get murdered. Keenan! Kate continued running and crying as she was still the last one behind. The killer chased after them again. This time, she tripped over a branch and fell flat on the ground. Kirsten called after her desperately. Kate! Edward stopped her from helping Kate. There's no time. Kate, come on, we gotta go! Bill Hader shouted. Kate shouted fearfully. He's gonna get me! The camera zoomed in on Kate and the killer's faces. Oh no. No, 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 no! Kate mumbled. She accepted her fate by closing her eyes, but the killer jumped over her and rushed to kill Bill Hader instead. Bill begged for his life. No, no, please! No! No, no, no! As Bill screamed in the distance, the others hid behind a tree. Andy Samberg cried softly. We're dead. We're all dead. I can't believe we lost Keenan and Bill, Edward said, panting slightly, sweaty and with the visual of an action hero right now, which made a lot of girls swoon. Edward, Kirsten, and Andy became alert when they heard the approaching footsteps. Kate hugged her body as she crouched next to her friends. Kirsten said, Kate! You're alive! I thought you were a goner. Me too, but he just ran right past me, Kate said, her eyes darting to look at the serial killer from afar. Andy said, Okay, guys. We gotta make a run for the cabin. There was a cabin right in front of them. Kirsten raised an eyebrow, not sure if that was the right move. What? Edward said. We should see if it's unlocked first. Ominous music played, making the situation even more suspenseful. Kirsten whispered. He'll see us. Kate suddenly volunteered. I'll do it. All of them exclaimed together. What? Kate glanced at the serial killer again, her heart wanting confirmation. Yeah. I'll go. Edward exclaimed. Okay. Andy said. Just be careful. Kate whispered. Okay. She slowly made her way to the cabin, accompanied by ominous music. Suddenly, she stepped on a twig. The killer was alerted by the snapping sound and turned to her. They had another standoff before the killer ignored her. Her expression immediately turned bewildered, and she turned to her friends, whispering, Are you guys seeing this? I'll go! Kate begrudgingly went to check the door and shouted whisperingly after opening it. It's unlocked. Everyone slowly walked to the cabin, cautious not to attract the killer's attention. Suddenly, Andy stepped on a twig, just like Kate had before. He closed his eyes and accepted his fate, while his friends started running. Edward and Kirsten tried to lock the door, but the lock was broken. They decided to hide in the closet while Kate complained. You're seeing this, right? It's like he's just going out of his way to avoid me? Edward and Kirsten were desperate to stay alive while Kate was just casually strolling around. The stark contrast between them made the crowd burst into laughter. The killer invaded the cabin. Edward and Kirsten called Kate, trying to get her to hide with them. Just give me 1 second, Kate said, closing the closet door and leaving her alone with the killer. The killer dragged a sofa to barricade the door, all while Kate casually approached him. Can I talk to you for a second? I just get the sense, I'm gonna use our words here. The killer banged on the closet door, trying to open it while Kate shared her feelings. I feel like you're not interested in me. Not in a romantic way, obviously. I just noticed that you're going after him, after her. The killer grabbed a fireplace stoker and began to break down the wooden door. Never me, Kate said begrudgingly, with her back against the wall, standing right next to the killer. The door broke down. Edward and Kirsten ran away from the killer immediately. See, like that. Like you're doing now. Typically, I try not to put my emotions on other people. Kate followed the killer as he followed the duo. But I am feeling frustrated if I'm being 100% honest right now, Kate said. The killer almost killed Edward before Kate positioned herself between the two parties. Okay, this is a perfect example of what's happening right now. You're doing it, and it's upsetting me. It hurts, rejection hurts. Can you hear me through that mask? The killer grunted in frustration. Edward and Kirsten took the opportunity to run away from the killer, getting outside of the cabin. Kate growled in frustration as the killer ran away from her again. Please don't walk away. This is important to me. Edward and Kirsten found their car and immediately got inside. They managed to start the engine and ran away from the killer while he banged on the car window. As the car left, the killer was left alone in the woods. He moved slowly and accidentally stepped on a twig. Kate appeared from the shadows, right behind him. Hey! The killer widened his eyes. Kate shouted from afar. Where do you think you're going, huh? We're not done here. Okay, I have more to say to you, mister. The killer screamed like a girl and ran away from her in fear. The crowd applauded as the show ended. The new type of skit, albeit experimental for SNL in this era, received positive feedback from the audience. The ratings concluded at 10.6, which was an amazing achievement for SNL. So much so that the bosses down at NBC drove to the building to congratulate the cast and the producers. But the star of today was already gone. Edward left with Vanessa after the show ended. The cast wanted to throw a party, but Edward excused himself, telling them that he was too tired. We're going to watch wrestling, right? Vanessa asked as they got into the car. Edward looked at her with disbelief and said, Yeah. We're gonna. Did you really think we're going to go back home? I'm sorry that you're so convincing when you're lying, Vanessa said, rolling her eyes at him. Even I believed it. She suddenly smiled and looked at him. You did really great at today's show. I'm happy to hear that. Now let's go watch some sweaty men rubbing bodies with one another. Edward joked as he drove away from the SNL building. There were 4 different parties who watched the show tonight from a hidden safe house. Ansel Garrick was a mercenary specializing in the extraction of certain targets from maximum security black sites. But tomorrow, he had another mission. He had prominent scars on his face, given to him by Raymond Reddington. He stared at his target on the screen with a mean face as the kid said goodbye to the audience. Do we have confirmation on whether he's going to the party tomorrow? Ansel asked his goons. No, sir, the goons replied. Although Bayawadi claims that he's coming to the party on his social media. Good. We're finally going to finish our mission. He has impenetrable security, but when he goes to the party tomorrow, he will have to leave his escort behind. Ansel muttered with an evil smirk. In another abandoned warehouse, which had been turned into a safe house, Gina Zanatakos, yes, that was her real name. A corporate terrorist for hire, said nothing as she stared at the documents full of psychological profiles on Edward. At least he's pretty funny, she mumbled as she read the list of likes in the file. Big boobs? Really? I don't peg him for a guy who objectifies women. She furrowed her eyebrows and decided to stuff her brow for tomorrow. Mr. Ahmed, Bayawadi's personal assistant, was also gathered in a safe house with his ragtag group of mercenaries, built by people with poor backgrounds instead of military backgrounds. Tomorrow at the party, I will make America pay, Mr. Ahmed said menacingly. What they cared about was money, and nothing else. Pay, as in a literal sense. Suddenly, a few men in suits entered the safe house Mr. Ahmed was in. They handed him a device and said, "This will block the Starlink connection inside the hotel. Just remember our deal. Don't touch the boy. We want him alive." Mr. Ahmed smirked and said, "Sure. We won't touch Edward Newgate. But everyone else is fair game." Chapter 372, Raven. Edward POV. Brimming with excitement, Vanessa jumped out of her seat and shouted viciously as the wrestlers fought with each other. "Finish him," she bellowed. She made my stomach hurt from all the laughing. Wearing thick-framed glasses and a cap, Vanessa hugged my hand constantly as we watched the show. As the clock ticked past midnight, the small wrestling club still pulsed with energy. The ring, illuminated by spotlights, was centered directly on the stage while the 2-story audience area remained dark. We sat on the upper floor with a nice view of the ring. The tickets cost around $200, but Jason sponsored them. The dim venue made it easy for us to hide our identities. Vanessa was told that the cap and the glasses were already enough to disguise us, but I actually used the transformation jutsu to change our facial features. Vanessa was a girl with a lip ring and dark emo hair. She had blue streaks in her hair. I, on the other hand, was a mean-looking tattooed man with a nose ring. People avoided us when they saw us on the street. Vanessa still saw me as myself, though, as I used my Sharingan to allow her to see through my disguise. So from her point of view, no one recognized us when we were in glasses and a hat. We were surrounded by a raucous crowd, eager for the next exhibition match. It reminded me of the cage match scene in Spider-Man, with all the people yelling and jeering at the performance. Local wrestlers, clad in vibrant costumes, entered the ring, each trying to outdo the other with their signature moves. There weren't many scripted events like in WWE, but the wrestlers could throw down a hell of a show. There isn't any audience participation for this one. Vanessa sighed in disappointment as the show was closing. I looked at her with disbelief and said, "You want to wrestle?" "No, I want to see you wrestle." She stuck her tongue out. I smirked and said, "Makes sense. You always love it when we do the bed gymnastics together." She blushed a bit and said, "Shut, okay. There are no girls in the fight either. I've never watched a girls' wrestling match before." "Me too," I said, agreeing with her easily. Our conversation was overheard by a red-haired, muscular woman in latex clothes who sat nearby. Hey, if you want to see girls fighting, there's another wrestling club in Hell's Kitchen that has a match tomorrow. You should stop by. She handed us a flyer, her face slightly reluctant to do so. Are you here to promote your match? I asked her with a teasing smirk. The woman was startled and asked urgently, How did you know? I turned the flyer toward her and said, Your picture is on the flyer. Vanessa laughed out loud, adding to the woman's embarrassment. She grabbed the flyers back from our hands and huffed away angrily, saying, Don't come if you don't want to then. As she left, Vanessa and I turned to each other. She sighed. We never even said we don't want to go. I remember the details on the flyer. We can go there tomorrow if we have time, I said casually. We walked out of the building and talked while we were going to the car. If we have time to go, how about the party? Are you really not going? Vanessa asked, hiding her frustrations. Do you want to go? I sensed something more and wanted confirmation. If you want to go, we can go, Vanessa argued. I don't want to go if you don't want to go. Her face was full of expectation. We can go. I want to go, I said, but my tone was slightly heavy. No, I don't want to force you. We don't have to go. She dismissed her own feelings, thinking she was being a bother. I gave her a weird look, and she remembered what we had talked about before. Oh, I need to be more forward with my feelings. I want to go to the party. Ashley and Selena are going, so I want to go too, she said honestly. I smiled in satisfaction and said, Okay then. I'll finish up the film shoot early and meet you there. Vanessa widened her eyes as she remembered I still had work to do. I wasn't rejecting the invitation wantonly. It would be pretty hard since the shooting would begin at night. The trick with the building would only work then. Wait, you don't have to. I'll just go with my friends and have a girls' night. Vanessa held my arm and looked intently into my eyes. We stopped right in the middle of a dark alley. Before I could answer, a hidden figure from the darkness came forth and growled. Hey! Freako motherfucker! Give me your wallet! The balding man wearing a worn-out beanie and a tattered jacket pointed his knife at both of us. Startled, Vanessa immediately hid behind me. Edward. We're being mugged, she said, holding my shirt tightly. I can see that, Ness, I said with a grin. It's like my dream is finally coming true. I added. Both the mugger and Vanessa were confused by my words. The mugger got irritated and said, Give me your wallet. Now. Can you hold on for a second? I said as I turned and grabbed Vanessa from behind me. Here, wear this. I gave her a pearl necklace from my back pocket. No. Give that to me. The mugger tried to snatch it, but I grabbed his wrist with my right hand without looking. The mugger was startled as he couldn't pry his hand away easily. He pulled with all his might, and I let it go, causing him to stagger a few steps backward. You fucker. He swung with the other hand, trying to stab my back. Calm down, will ya? I turned and grabbed his hand, stopping the knife attack. I gripped his hand with heavy strength, causing him to groan and let go of the knife. I grabbed it midair. He retreated fearfully a few steps back. Hold on. Don't go just yet. We still haven't finished the game here, I said as I folded the knife in two and dropped it to the ground. It was a thick army knife, very durable, but it didn't pose a problem to me at all. The mugger widened his eyes and ran away immediately while screaming for his life. Monster! No, hold on. Come back. We still haven't acted out Batman's parents' death in the alley yet. I raised my hand, trying to reach for him, but he was gone. I could chase after him easily, but that would leave Vanessa alone. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, her lips slightly parting. You want to be killed in the alley? She yelled at me with disbelief. What are you going to do, give him a gun next? Well, a toy gun. Not a real gun, I said as I grabbed the gun from my back. Why? Are you scared? I smirked. I'm not scared. But I'm really pissed off right now, Vanessa said, much to my confusion. A police car suddenly stopped right next to us. Freeze! Drop the gun! A police detective got off and aimed her gun at me. I turned and smiled as I saw who she was, turning off my transformation technique at the same time. Hey, Rosa. I greeted her casually. Edward? Rosa scrutinized my appearance, falling into disbelief. I pointed to the alley and said, If you want to find the mugger, he ran away in this direction. You were mugged? Rosa lowered her gun and put it back in her holster. What are you doing walking around out here without any security? This is not a safe place for a minor. She nagged as she went to check out the alley. But she didn't go far and returned to us. Oh, we went to a wrestling show, I replied casually. Rosa grunted and grabbed the gun from my hand. You're not old enough to carry a gun. Geez. It's only a toy gun. I snarked. Toy? Rosa pressed the trigger, and water came out. Vanessa finally reacted and said to Rosa, Ma'am, are you here on patrol? Because I'd like to report something. Why, yeah, I can take your report. You're going to head down to the station to give your testimony. Maybe help with the police sketch, Rosa said, calming herself down. No. I'd like to put this guy in jail for the night. He wanted to play with the mugger. He wants to role-play with them. Rosa was startled, and she turned to me angrily. You want to do what? I looked at Vanessa with disbelief and said, So are we tattling now? I don't care. You have some problems, she said angrily. Jake Peralta ran to where we were, slightly panting. I lost him. Did you find him? He asked with exasperation. Rosa turned to Jake and said, I've already cuffed him and thrown him to the back of the car. She pointed at their police car a few meters away. There was a culprit inside the car, waiting anxiously. Jake said with annoyance. What, when? 20 minutes ago, Rosa said with a smirk. So you let me run around for 20 minutes? Jake whined with disbelief. Suddenly, Jake saw me and a huge grin broke out in his face. Oh my God! Edward Newgate! Jake! I greeted him casually. Rosa grabbed my arm and said to Jake, Call another patrol car. We need to bring him to jail too. What? On what crimes? Jake was startled. Being stupid. Vanessa crossed her arms together and complained. So I was brought to the police station. Well, I went there in my car willingly. I still had to file the police report since Rosa was there. They brought the folded knife with them as evidence. I told you, this is not necessary. It's a mugger, not an international terrorist. You don't need to mobilize the military to New York. General Beckman, the CIA director I saved before, called my phone after she had information that I was brought into the police station. She wanted to repay what I did before and even threatened the police captain to find and solve the culprit. The latter part was rejected by Captain Holt. Okay. It's done. You guys can go back home now. Straight back home, Rosa said, stressing out the last sentence. Why are you on the night shift anyway? Shouldn't Detective Lohank be the one to work on the case? I asked Rosa with a cheerful smile, which annoyed her again. Jake immediately interjected, whispering, Don't bring up Lohank's name around her. She's pissed enough. I think she looks gorgeous when she gets pissed, I said coyly. What did you say? Rosa almost lunged at me, but Jake held her back and screamed, Run away, Edward. Run. I guess my luck was pretty bad tonight. Every girl I was talking to got pissed. I just walked out of there after grabbing my girlfriend. Should we call it a night and go home? I asked. Yeah. We definitely should. You know, I'd entertain your games like the Spider-Man one. But you need to find the line, she scolded me. Sorry about that, I said sincerely. Why did you even do that? And you're not even Bruce Wayne in this scenario, Vanessa asked, shooting a murderous look. I shrugged and said, I guess I just want the excitement. You were just on SNL. Literally, just hours ago. Is that not exciting enough? Vanessa said with frustration. Then her voice shook slightly as she came to a realization. Is spending time with me also not exciting for you? Wait, Ness. That's really not it, I said, holding her arm and trying to comfort her. I just like to mess around, that's all. She turned her back on me and walked away angrily. We had a silent car ride home, and she went straight to bed after we got into the house. After she changed into her pajamas, she went to the kitchen to grab a drink when I stopped her. All right. Since you're definitely going to be mad the whole night, allow me to say this one thing. What? She was sulky. In the scenario, the Waynes are married, have a small son, and live a happy life as billionaires. I'm going to punch the guy before he shoots the guns so that they may continue living happily. That is what I plan to do. Vanessa's cold demeanor melted a bit, and she became slightly bashful. What, is that really it? Or are you just saying that so I will sleep with you tonight? I'm dead serious. Without me saying much, Vanessa connected the metaphorical dots inside her mind, and a small tug appeared on her lip. She cleared her throat and pretended to still be angry. Well, at least talk with me before you do this sort of stuff. I don't want to be a party popper, but I'd still like to be prepared. I laughed and said, Sorry about that. So, you're not mad at me anymore? I leaned in close and touched her cheek affectionately. Vanessa breathed heavily before she said, You know I cannot be mad at you for long. As we leaned in for a kiss, suddenly my senses alerted me. I immediately pulled Vanessa, hiding her behind me, and turned my head to the glass window. Ness, slowly retreat and hide, I said to her, my eyes glowing red as I gazed at the balcony. Ed, what is happening? You're scaring me, Vanessa said fearfully, peeking at where I was looking. She widened her eyes when she saw a man standing there. A white-haired man wearing an old-fashioned white suit. His eyes glowed red, just like mine. Wait. Is it? I widened my eyes in shock as I sensed a familiar feeling. The Raven? Vanessa shivered, thinking that it was his nickname. No, it was the actual bird. It was the Raven who sent me the messages before. He entered the house through the windows and smiled at me. Sorry for the sudden drop-in. I am hired to deliver the news to you. Really? You can't send me a message on my phone? You need to drop by on my balcony, ruining the chances of me getting laid tonight? The man replied. What's a phone? Anyway, I'm not going to stay here long. Edward, who is this? Vanessa asked, still hiding. A friend, I said comfortingly. She finally stopped hiding behind me and stood at my side. Eve told me to tell you this. Your session has been cancelled. In fact, it has been cancelled until next year, the man said. I realized the trip he was referring to was about the afterlife session, where I rolled my gachas. Why? I asked, raising an eyebrow. How should I know? I'm only here to send a message. Oh, but she was talking about the Mayans. I only overheard that, and something about the reset, he said before he turned back to walk to the balcony. Hey, I called him. He turned around and asked. What? Use the elevator. That's what humans do, I said with a smirk. Oh, right. Before he left, I asked him, Hey, what should I call you? I have no name. The Raven will be fine, he replied casually. Vanessa was annoyed and said, You know, you're friends with a lot of weird people. I won't deny that. I laughed, patting her head. Sorry that I scared you for nothing. Vanessa pursed her lips before saying, Hey, shouldn't you give the security downstairs a heads up? They will take down your friend. Let them. They have been quite complacent recently. It will be a good lesson for them all, I said before I wrapped my hand around Vanessa's waist and said, Now, where are we? However, she cupped my mouth before I could kiss her and said, Don't pretend you're still in the mood. I'm sure that your mind is filled with questions that you need answers to. Go and do your research, I'll be fine. I was silent for a while before I kissed her and said, This is why I love you. I let her go and went to my computer. Seriously, that guy. At least act like you're a little distressed about it. Vanessa smirked before leaving to go to bed. There was only one thing I found that made sense: the Mayan calendar. The Mayan long count calendar cycle ended on December 21st, 2012. Some people misinterpreted this to mean the end of the world. Some predicted that we'd be wiped out by a natural disaster like a giant tidal wave, an Earth-wide earthquake, or a tremendous volcanic eruption. Basically, apocalypse-level stuff. The internet theory, which would have been obscure, was amplified when it was mixed with another theory. The theory of galactic alignment. One of the central claims surrounding 2012 was the idea of a rare galactic alignment between the Earth, the Sun, and the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Proponents of doomsday theories argued that this alignment would trigger cataclysmic events. Of course, it was all poppycock. I remembered when the time passed that the Mayans' calendar would signify a reset of the count, not the ending of the world. But like everything the internet does, they took something out of nothing and made a big deal about it. The belief that the world would end was spreading like wildfire. The movie 2012, which was released in 2009, was taken to be a prophetic movie, and there was mass hysteria going on. Some people started to empty out their bank accounts and went traveling. A lot of them quit their jobs, and some even punched their shitty boss, wanting to strike that out of their to-do list. Is this it? Why is the afterlife shut down because of this? I muttered with an incomprehensible expression. Or because the mass hysteria turned the entire thing into a belief? The sessions are on days related to life or death. So they had to shut it down because everyone is thinking of dying? While I was researching, something else was happening on the ground floor of the building. General POV. Ding. As the lift opened, Raven found a group of people in the lobby wearing black suits and carrying firearms. Oh. Hi. He smiled cheerfully and just waltzed by them. Stop right there. Mickey, the head of security, stopped him by holding his shoulder. Who are you? He asked sternly. I'm Raven, he replied with a childish smile. I'm a friend of Edward. What? I've never heard of the Raven before. Did you just come down from the penthouse? Yes. I met with Edward there. He got pretty scared when he saw me. His girlfriend started to hide behind him. Raven said casually. What? Mickey's heart sank. His mind was full of horrors. Can you let me go now? I have to leave and tell my employer that I have already sent out the message. With every word that came out of his mouth, Mickey's mind crumbled. He immediately grabbed his gun and pointed it at Raven's head. Raven smiled and said, You cannot kill me with this. The lack of nervousness made Mickey think he was right. We'll find out. Put your hands behind your back, Mickey said before he signaled the other guys to come and handcuff the mystery man. But before he could do so, Raven made a roundhouse kick and struck him in the head. Mickey fell down, and everyone aimed their guns at him. Raven said, Sorry. But I have to go now. I cannot be late again. Wu Jin stayed hidden on the side, evaluating the others as they fought against the man. Within 20 seconds, all 15 of them were knocked down. And they were in peak human form. Raven dusted off his suit, a splash of blood on his sleeve. He whined, I love this suit. Now it's all ruined. Raven left, and what happened inside the building was witnessed by a person monitoring Edward's bodyguards. Interesting. All of them are knocked out. Isn't this a chance for us? He muttered with excitement when suddenly a knife flew by and hit him in the middle of his eyebrows. His eyes went blank, and he flopped his head down onto the table. Wu Jin muttered, At the very least, I shouldn't let the news out. The entire security team woke up an hour later and realized that their employer wasn't in any danger at all. They were supposed to feel relieved, but their pride was hurt. They couldn't comprehend being taken down by a man who looked like he was in his early 20s. In less than a few hours, Edward's number of securities tripled. 45 muscular men fully equipped with armors and advanced weaponry patrolled the area. It made every force that was eyeing Edward become restless. Did someone figure out our plans? Ansel Garrick asked his team before he said. Or did someone in here leaked it? He narrowed his eyes dangerously as he looked at his subordinates. A few of them would lose their lives tonight. Chapter 373, 1 month. General POV. The next morning. Wearing a large white shirt as pajamas, Vanessa walked into the living room and saw towering stacks of books on the coffee table. The laptop screen was filled with hypotheses, and there was a fresh cup of coffee next to it. But the person who had been doing research until an hour ago was gone. Vanessa followed the sweet scent in the air to the kitchen, and saw him baking cupcakes instead. "What are you doing?" she asked as she sat in front of the kitchen island. "The crew is landing at the airport right about now. I figured I'd bake them some cupcakes," Edward said as he poured the batter into the paper cups and placed them inside the oven. "Did you find anything from your research?" she asked as she grabbed the batter bowl and licked the excess with a spatula. "I did. Thousands of them. I just don't know which one is the right one." Edward smiled wryly and poured a cup of coffee for his girlfriend. "More importantly, where did you get the books?" Vanessa suddenly asked, her sleepiness gone after taking her first sip of coffee. The coffee beans were from Edward's farm, and it tasted better than any coffee Vanessa had ever had before. She grinned and added, "Did you break into the library last night? Because I know none of them were here before." Edward was silent for a while, looking at Vanessa with mild shock. "Your soul must have followed me while you were sleeping." "I did check them out on the system properly and will return them all today." Realizing she was correct, Vanessa was speechless for a few seconds. Edward grinned as he saw her reaction before grabbing something from the lower cabinet. Then, he placed it gently in front of her. "Since I was already out, I figured I should get something special for my lady to apologize for hanging her out to dry last night." He gave her a bouquet of flowers, which made Vanessa's face light up, and she swooned. Edward scrunched his eyes and said playfully, "I am using the phrase hanging out to dry figuratively, but there was a real possibility that it happened." "Oh my goodness! Edward! This is so beautiful!" she said with adoration before changing her expression and glaring at him. "Hey! I'm not that kind of girl who's always on. I went to sleep peacefully last night, not being hot and bothered, squirming and calling your name as you'd like to fantasize." "Really? How about right now?" Edward said before he took out a small present from his pocket. Vanessa widened her eyes again and accepted the gift with a slight bounce. "A bracelet? What's the occasion?" she said gleefully, her eyes glued to the shiny trinket. "Nothing much. Just our 1-month anniversary as a couple." Edward smiled with adoration as he saw how happy she was. Vanessa's expression froze, and she turned to him awkwardly. "Oh, our 1-month anniversary? That's already happening?" Her eyes rolled to the right side as she tried to remember the date. "It's not our 1 month. That's in 2 days." She scowled, thinking that Edward was messing with her. "Nope. It's today," Edward argued back. "I asked you out on this date last month." Vanessa shrank back and said, I said yes 2 days later." "Oh, so I'm right from my point of view, but wrong from yours. How do we settle this?" Edward asked casually. Vanessa rubbed her chin and replied, "Take the middle point and let tomorrow be our anniversary date? You haven't bought me anything, huh? I guess I can do it tomorrow," Edward said as he grabbed the bracelet back from Vanessa. "Wait, I've already seen it. Just give it to me," she pleaded, not letting go of her grip on the bracelet. Edward smirked and said, "No. If I give you this today, then I'll have nothing to give you tomorrow. You don't have to give me a present again." Edward pretended to be helpless and said, "Fine. I can give it to you today, but since you don't have anything from me, I'm going to punish you." "Oh, do you want to do something kinky this morning?" Vanessa said, slightly swaying her body, trying to tempt Edward. But he shook his head and said, "I have something else in mind." In the public library an hour later, Vanessa pursed her lips as she begrudgingly waited in line at the counter. She mumbled under her breath, feeling quite irritated. It's the second time. He hung me out to dry again. Isn't a teenager supposed to be horny all the time? Instead of meeting her expectations, he asked her to return all the books he borrowed last night. There were around 20 books, and Vanessa needed to go to 5 libraries to return them all. At the last library, Edward asked her to find another book for him, so she had to search for it. The History and Construction of the Mesoamerican Codex? That's a rare one. The librarian checked the library list before saying, We don't have that. It's only available in the Library of Congress. So, I need to go to Washington to get it? Vanessa said in disbelief, pushing up her white circular sunglasses that she was using to hide her identity. Yes, that's accurate. The history, the entire era you're searching for, is usually broken down into smaller parts. The dashing English librarian took off his glasses and wiped them. We do have a dissertation by Rupert Giles in which he examines the Aztec lands map, 1539, and the Huexcinco Codex, 1531, two of the most important primary source Nahua documents in the collections of the Library of Congress, which have survived from the early contact period. Vanessa became dizzy from all the words thrown at her and said, Just give me that, and I'll go. You can search for the book on the 3rd floor, East Wing. Be warned, there's a lot of dust around there because we lack the funds to hire people to clean it regularly, he said with a coy smile. Vanessa grumbled and went to search for the book herself. Wu Jin, who had been following her around to protect her, turned to the librarian and greeted. Hi, Matt. Jean, it's been a while. I guess our master is messing around again, using names like Rupert Giles to create a fake dissertation. The librarian laughed lightly. Wu Jin nodded along and said, I believe that's from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Yes. He is quite obsessed with pop culture references. I believe that if he focused more on books, he would. Before Matt could finish talking, a book dropped onto his head. He said, unflinching, he's here. Jean, you could have warned me. Wu Jin kept his poker face and then followed Vanessa to guard her. He only did so until the entrance of the East Wing, and then guarded the door instead, leaving Vanessa to search for the book alone inside. He's not kidding. It is quite dusty over here. Vanessa could see flecks of dust floating in the sun rays. She covered her mouth with a tissue before walking. What's the name of the book again? She pressed her forehead with her index finger, trying hard to remember. But before she could find the book, a red door on the side of the room attracted her attention. The barn door, which had a circular top, was out of place in the library. I can check it out later, she said as she walked past the door. Beep. Suddenly, the bracelet Edward gave her made a sound. Huh! Vanessa was startled and became curious. She turned back and waved her hand near the door, but there was no sound. Only when she stood in front of the door did she get a reaction from her bracelet. Her heart beat quicker, an excited grin on her face. The door automatically unlocked. Vanessa's heart almost burst when she saw the balloons and other decorations in the room. Red balloons and red roses. There was a table and a picnic basket in the middle of the room. It was a special surprise from Edward to commemorate the day. You're late, Edward said as he appeared from behind the shelves where he had been hiding. With a grin on his face, he asked, Did you like the surprise? Vanessa ran to him and tackled him into a hug. I really love it, she exclaimed. You're the best boyfriend ever, she said as she kissed his cheek. They had brunch together at the library, amongst other stuff they were doing. Edward and Vanessa left the library slightly disheveled. Vanessa said, I'll be waiting for you at the party. I'll make sure to be there. Lower East Side, New York. The film crew gathered before sunset to film the scene for the movie Now You See Me, for the building trick. As the staff set up the scene, Edward and a team of practical effects experts went to a rundown building nearby. This will be the part where the horsemen find the blueprints, Edward explained to the practical effects experts. We'll remove the windows here and change them into stained glass of an angel. He pointed to the dirty windows covered with newspaper. The practical effects staff listed his requirements with slight anxiety. One of them spoke up. If you're planning to do this, then the calculations and positioning cannot be skewed, even by just 1 centimeter. The range of error is 5 millimeters. Edward interjected with an excited grin. Don't worry, I already have all the calculations done. However, we only have 1 shot to film this scene per day. He showed the blueprints he had drawn. The trick will only reveal itself between 2:32 and 2:35 in the afternoon. If we miss the shot, we'll have to stop filming and continue it the next day. One of them raised his hand, and Edward called up to him. Yes? Why not use CGI? It'll save a lot of time and effort. He asked anxiously. Edward furrowed his eyebrows and said, The thing is, we're going to promote the movie by focusing on the realism of the tricks. People need to think this could happen in real life. I don't want to cheapen it by using CGI. The practical effects team nodded in understanding before breaking out in excited grins. Practical effects practices were dying in modern Hollywood after the rise of CGI. To be able to work with groundbreaking practical effects was a dream come true for them. We still have 2 months before the movie begins filming for real. The other actors still need to learn how to shuffle cards and do magic tricks. We'll start reconstructing this room as the blueprint reveals. Edward also planned to use the scene to establish a capability test and find the leader for the group of 4 horsemen. It would also force them to find common ground as they would be trapped in the room and need to solve the puzzle to get out under dangerous circumstances. A deadly magic trick would be forced upon them by the 5th horseman. The original movie never showed scenes where the horsemen learned how to work together. The protagonists of the first movie were the FBI agents, and the horsemen were basically just side characters. In the first 20 minutes of the movie, Edward reworked the scene to show how the horsemen rose from the ground up until they became big enough to headline the Vegas show. As the head of the studio, Edward didn't really care about the added runtime in the movie, as long as the story was great. The sun finally went down, and the crew had the darkness necessary to start filming. A crowd of extras gathered for the trick. Instead of just filming the one scene, Edward showcased his excellent skills by performing a magic routine. Can I borrow your phone? Just for a sec? Edward said as he approached a teenage girl. She squealed and replied excitedly. Yeah. He took the phone from her and walked right to the center of the crowd again. Just for a second, yeah? I promise I'll give it back, mostly intact. The crowd laughed and jeered at him. Edward grinned, turned the phone upside down, and showed everyone that it was a normal phone. You know, my original design for the phone was quite a bit smaller than this. I keep a hidden function in them that can shrink back to the size I want. Are you ready? He covered the phone for just a split second, and it turned into a mini phone. Everyone gasped in amazement, and Edward went to another person, asking him for the finished bottle of Yoo-hoo in his hand. He threw the mini phone into the glass bottle, then changed it back to its original size. Everyone was in awe after Edward asked the girl's friend to call her number, and the phone inside the glass rang. Now just remember something tonight, the closer you look, the less you see. He repeated this multiple times, conditioning the crowd for his tricks. He was recorded by a cameraman, and it would be used in the marketing campaign for the movie. The building behind Edward was always in the shot, making the trick even more impressive when he changed the lights on the building to the 7 of diamonds. Cut! That was impressive. The assistant director called after the scene ended. What time is it? Edward asked Randall, his personal assistant. 9. We wrapped up the scene pretty early, Randall replied. Edward nodded in satisfaction and said, The party starts at 8, but I don't think anyone would be there at 8. All right. Then I'll be going now, Edward said to Randall. You can help me wrap it all up. Leave that to me, Randall said with a proud tone. Wyla approached Edward and asked, Hey, what's this I'm hearing about a party? Oh, there's a rooftop party at the Waldorf Astoria. It's a pretty exclusive party. Edward said with a slightly uncomfortable expression. Wyla was taken aback and said, Exclusive? Ah. So I cannot go? Can't you do anything? Please? For me. She pouted her lips in an attempt to act cute. All right. I'll get you in. Edward sighed. They did give me a +1 after all. Wyla smiled in satisfaction and said, I'll tell my manager. Oh, I still need to get ready. Your face looks really annoyed. Wyla was in disbelief as she saw Edward's face change when she mentioned getting ready. Edward didn't bother to hide his feelings and said, Use the makeup artist here, and you can get the dress from the staff. Get ready in the car. I'll wait for you at the entrance. Wyla was shocked at first, but then she surrendered to her fate. There were still a lot of cars around in the city that never sleeps. It took around 40 minutes to get to the hotel. Edward checked his watch with slight anxiousness. Why am I getting a bad feeling about this? Around 6, Vanessa gathered the girls together at Edward's place to get ready for the party. However, the situation turned slightly awkward when there was an extra person on the list. Just finishing up her world tour, Taylor was also invited to the party. So, I heard you're dating Edward right now. How did that happen? Taylor asked directly as Vanessa was trying out a green dress. The right place and the right time, I guess. I don't really know since he asked me out. Vanessa replied with a slightly smug tone. And why is this bothering you? Aren't you dating someone right now? Vanessa shot back. He's just someone I'm using to pass the time, Taylor said as she picked a similar dress to Vanessa's, just to force her to change into another dress. Waldorf Astoria rooftop. Bayawati looked around with disappointment before turning to the hotel manager. So, there's no rooftop pool with neon lights? There are only boring tables? His secretary, Mr. Ahmed, interjected and replied on the hotel manager's behalf. The building was built in 1931. It was a different time. Pools with neon lights weren't really popular back then. Shut up, FGGT. You're freaking useless. Is this really the best place you can find for the party? Are you telling me that I paid $2 million for this? Bayawati was irked. I could have hired 100 strippers and rented out a nightclub for 1/10 of that. What about the mansion in Long Island? Can't we still change the venue now? The hotel manager felt humiliated but still kept his mouth shut. Bayawati kept yelling at everything until he was tired. Then, the hotel manager finally spoke using a posh tone. I'm sorry for the dissatisfaction, sir. If you're looking for a nightclub vibes, we couldn't help you with that. We focused more on prestige. The Met Gala, the engagement party of Prince Rainier III and Grace Kelly, President John F. Kennedy's birthday gala. The Waldorf Astoria has a long history of hosting elaborate dinner parties and galas, often featuring a who's who of the rich and famous. That's what we had planned for tonight. Wait. So, Bruce Wayne's type of events? Bayawati became slightly excited, raising an eyebrow as he waited for an answer. Mr. Ahmed interjected again. Like the party where the Joker intrudes and throws Batman's girlfriend out of the window. Oh. That kind of party. Galas are usually ceremonies, am I right? So, what exactly am I doing here? Bringing people in just to have dinner? Bayawati was confused. It's a ball, the hotel manager said. Whose balls? Bayawati was startled. He meant, like a dance. Like prom. Mr. Ahmed explained. Inside his mind, he was cursing the ignorant, entitled rich brat in front of him. We invited the guests for the ball, and it would also be a fundraiser for sick children. The hotel manager replied. Really? I don't think that's something I would ever attend, Bayawati said with disbelief. Chapter 374 Raid First Wave. General POV. Oh, I forgot to eat. Edward muttered in realization as his stomach started growling. There is food at the party, right? He asked Randall, his manager. Wearing a formal black suit, Edward opted for a bow tie instead of a regular tie. The ever-changing nature of the party made him raise an eyebrow, but he wasn't worried about it. Mickey, his bodyguard, who was sitting beside Randall in the SUV, said solemnly, "Don't eat anything at the party unless you check for poison first." Mickey had a black eye and wore a neck brace after yesterday's event. Randall was afraid to rebuke him, knowing how much pressure Mickey was under. That's why Edward decided to give him a gift. Edward chuckled and said, "Don't worry. I'm basically immune to all of Earth's poisons. Even the blue-ringed octopus's poison can't take me down." Randall narrowed his eyes in confusion and said, "Sometimes I really start to wonder if you're even human." "You know what, Rand? I wonder about that too a lot." Edward sighed as he looked out the window. Edward and Wella arrived at the party around 10:30 due to major traffic congestion. Edward escorted Wella inside like a gentleman, and their pictures were taken by the paparazzi camping outside the hotel. The reporters shouted questions while camera flashes almost blinded Wella, but Edward just smiled and continued guiding her inside. "That was pretty scary." Wella cursed as she rubbed her sore eyes. Edward smirked and said, "What? You're intimidated already? That's just my daily life, you know." Wella pouted, sticking her tongue out as she said, Yeah, I'm not as famous as you are. But your fame will get a boost after tonight. Pretty sure your name will become mainstream for a while. If nothing else happens," Edward said, gently grabbing her hand as she held onto his bicep. The hotel manager smiled widely upon seeing Edward. "Sir, it's an honor to receive a distinguished guest like yourself today," he said with a posh English tone. Willa was taken aback. She had been to the hotel a few times before, but never had the hotel manager rushed to greet her. "Ah, Wilhelm. Your mustache is glorious as always," Edward joked. Wilhelm smiled in satisfaction before pinching the tip of his Mr. Pringle's mustache. "As expected, you're the only one who would remember me, sir," Wilhelm said, sounding almost discouraged as he recalled his past experiences. Edward was the first in about a decade to ask for his name. "What are you talking about, Wilhelm? There's no way I'm going to forget the person who ran to find me fresh lobster at 3 a.m. This is Willa, by the way," he introduced her. "Should I give her the friend or date treatment, sir?" Wilhelm asked with a slight playful smirk. Willa was taken aback and stammered, "FR, we're friends." "Yeah, my real date is upstairs," Edward joked. "Then I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's go directly to the convention hall. I'm forever grateful. Now, can you tell me a bit about the event today? I'm so busy I actually had no idea what's happening here," Edward said, making small talk as they entered the elevator together. As the elevator doors closed, the doors on the right and left opened. 4 bulky men exited each elevator, carrying army bags. They split into 4 teams and headed to each of the hotel exits. Finally, Edward arrived at the party. "Fundraiser for kids with cleft lips, huh?" Edward muttered, a mysterious glint in his eyes. Wilhelm said with visible irritation, "He's just picking one at random to throw the party. The man has no class at all." Willa was confused. "Isn't this a good cause? Why is it bad for him to throw it?" Both Wilhelm and Edward turned to her at the same time. Wilhelm coughed slightly before saying, "It's not that it's bad, it's just not uncommon," Edward interjected. "There's a fundraiser every week. Yet, no money ever manages to find its way to help kids with a disability," Wilhelm said before leaving the two alone, opting not to join the party. Although almost every eye was on him, Edward sensed a few peculiar gazes as he walked into the convention hall. The formal part of the fundraiser was over. People were just mingling now. They had raised $1.2 million for the cause, which Edward thought was quite a poor collection given the high-profile faces in the crowd. "Is that Buffy?" Edward's eyes lit up when he saw Sarah Michelle Gellar from afar. "Finally, I have a chance to know what Wigan means," he added excitedly. Willa raised an eyebrow and said, "Doesn't that just mean freaking out?" "I had the same thought, but I still need confirmation," Edward said slyly. "I'm not trying to go there and talk with my first celebrity crush at all. Charlie Day, Jorge Garcia, Daniel Day Kim, Donald Faison, Jamie Presley, Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, Andy Samberg, Jason Sudeikis, Bill Hader, and many more celebrities were spotted inside the party. Edward was thoroughly confused. Did the Bey have enough influence to pull all of these wild cards into his party? I know that none of them are at the peak of their fame, but still, even Buffy is here. As he walked toward Vanessa, he noticed she looked uncomfortable while talking to Landry F., a shooting guard for the New York Knicks. Vanessa wore a stunning red dress that hugged her figure perfectly, featuring a daring high slit that showcased her legs elegantly. The sheer fabric draped gracefully over her neckline, adding a touch of allure. She paired it off with large golden earrings and a teardrop necklace, last but not least, the ring Edward gave her. So when summer comes, a few members of the team and I are going to Miami to have a good time. I know a pretty girl like you would really enjoy hanging out with us, Landry said, face full of expectation. Vanessa inhaled in exasperation before saying, You're making me uncomfortable. I'm going to go. Landry was taken aback by her crystal-clear rejection. He stood there motionlessly while Vanessa approached Edward. Hey, you're finally here, she said, her face lighting up. Do you know how long I've waited? How many unwanted advances I've shot down? She puffed her cheeks, asking with irritation. Edward just laughed and asked, How many did you get? Give me a number. 5. I bet I can break that record in about half an hour, Edward said with a smirk. I'm not going to let you. Vanessa stuck her tongue at him. Vanessa noticed Willa was still holding Edward's arm and asked, So, are you going to keep your hands on him through the night? Oh, sorry. Willa immediately freed her hand from him. Edward turned to Willa slightly before looking back at Vanessa. Where are your friends? I thought Ashley would be here. She's at the rooftop with some friends. The party is split into two. Those who want to dance are on the roof with the DJ. Willa immediately said, I'll go to the rooftop then. By the way, Vanessa, nice to see you. You too, Vanessa replied with a poker face. As Willa left awkwardly, Vanessa added in a whisper, Bitch. Edward was slightly surprised but didn't say anything. Do you want to go to the rooftop too? He asked. Vanessa shook her head and said, We should go around. I saw Buffy here. You're a fan of hers, right? Let's go talk to her. You're ticking all the right boxes today. Edward chuckled as he took Vanessa's hand and escorted her around. Gina Zanatakos, the corporate terrorist, caught sight of her target. She turned to her date and said, He's here. We'll move over to his position slowly. Tom Keene, her partner, said, He's not having his security with him. That's a nice thing. I don't want to get into any more trouble than I'm about to have. But after this, you owe me. Gina replied, We'll have to make it out alive if you want to cash in that favor. Gina's psychological profile on Edward mentioned a few things. First, Edward was quite protective in nature and had a soft spot for vulnerable people. Second, Edward was susceptible to attention. Because of the insecurities his mother instilled in him, he was prone to seeking attention in the public eye and felt the pressure of public scrutiny. Third, to get a second chance, an agent needed to have a certain moral standing in their mission. He would deal with the bad ones promptly but would play around with those who had no choice in the matter. The psychological profile mentioned many other factors, but those were the only ones Gina considered in concocting her plans. Also, the part where he loved big breasts. Wearing a sultry black dress, Gina pushed her chest up to the maximum size she could to gain Edward's attention. Edward was deep in conversation with Sarah Michelle Gellar at that time. He asked the actress, If you had the power of Buffy in real life, what would you do? Sarah laughed slightly and said, Probably do yoga without my body starting to hurt. Also, I'd help people in need. But mostly the yoga thing. I'm sorry. Is this really the first time you guys are meeting? Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah's husband, asked with amused disbelief. Honey, play nice. He's rich. Sarah joked while nudging her husband playfully. Really? That's all you care about? I guess it's true what they say, never meet your heroes. Turns out they're only after your money, Edward said, earning laughs from the circle. Suddenly, Edward noticed the suspicious couple from his peripheral vision. He was shocked inwardly as he recognized them. Isn't that Tom Keene and the spy girl he killed, who was his girlfriend at one time? Edward thought back to the plot of the TV series The Blacklist that he had seen before. He squinted his eyes. He could really be the actor. What's his name again? Egghead, no, Eggold. Target noticed us. It's time, Gina whispered to Tom after she saw Edward glance at them. Ed, is something wrong? Vanessa asked as she noticed the change in Edward's expression. He was suddenly alert. There's something, but I don't know what it is yet, he replied. Freddie and Sarah were confused but didn't bother to ask. They weren't close. Nice talking to you, Edward, Sarah said before she left with her husband. Nice talking with you too, Edward replied politely. After they left, Tom and Gina swooped in to converse with Edward before anyone else could. Hi, Mr. Newgate. I'm such a fan of yours, Tom said, shaking Edward's hand with a firm grip. Gina glanced at him warily before looking at Tom, seemingly asking for permission. Tom prattled on without turning his head to her. Your music, your tech, and especially the foundation you created to disseminate knowledge to the world. I'm thoroughly impressed by how much you have achieved at such a young age. Yes, of course. And you are? Edward finally managed to ask. Tom. You can call me Tom. And your last name? Edward pressed, which made the super spy taken aback inwardly. He kept a smiling face and said, Thomas Vincent Keene. Ah, so he's the spy, Edward concluded. Too bad. Eggold is a pretty great actor, he thought sadly. Nice to meet you, Tom. And you are? Edward turned to the girl. Gina beamed with excitement before saying meekly, Gina. I'm Gina. Tom seemed displeased when Gina spoke. He glared at her, making her lower her head and shrink back. I'm sorry about her. She can be quite dull at times. He apologized on her behalf. Vanessa was irked and snapped. That's a pretty rude thing to say. She barely said anything. Tom laughed it off, saying, Well, it's the truth. She's also a slut, seeing that she's trying to flirt with every man here tonight. His tone dripped with venom, and Gina held her arms together, slightly shivering in intense fear. Ah, so they are going down this route. Vanessa was deeply affected by the sham performance while Edward just looked at them with amusement. Tom continued, Enough about the whore. I always wanted to have a conversation with you. Hey, you bastard! Before Vanessa could speak, Edward chuckled and said, Sure. We can chat. I think she's a slut too, seeing that she's running her mouth like that, trying to tempt every man with her provocative dress. You should beat her up more. Both spies became stunned, Vanessa included. Beat her, Vanessa muttered with slight concern, taking her hands from Edward's arm and stared intently at his face. I'm sorry. Did I offend you? Tom immediately asked, chuckling awkwardly, but Edward waved it off. No, not at all. We're men. We have to do it to teach the gals a lesson. Am I right? Both spies widened their eyes in shock. Vanessa felt like she was walking with a different person. But since it was Edward, she decided to play along. I'm sorry, Edward. I was out of line. You can beat me up again tonight, she said, adding fear to her tone. Both spies were thoroughly confused. Their initial plan was to lure Edward with signs of abuse, triggering his protective instincts, and then move away from him. After some time had passed, Tom would initiate a domestic abuse scene while staying in Edward's line of sight so that he would intervene and take her away. Edward would knock Tom away and then bring Gina with him to safety. It would create a chance for them to be alone, and Gina could finally make her move. But Edward had thrown a wrench into the whole thing. Tom sensed something was wrong from the amusement hidden behind Edward's eyes, and his instincts told him to back away from the mission. However, Gina couldn't afford to lose her target, or she would lose her life. It placed the spies in a tough spot. They decided to move away and regroup, trying to improvise another plan. What was all that? Vanessa asked, anger in her eyes, after the duo was gone. Edward smirked and joked. Now you're angry? I thought you were an injured lamb being herded to slaughter. Vanessa groaned and said, Don't change the topic on me. When did you become a casual misogynist, or should I say, psychopathic girlfriend abuser? Edward laughed before explaining. Those two are spies. I guess they are trying to lure me. I'm sure it's a two-part plan, and he'll try to beat her up somewhere I can see so that I will intervene and take her away. Oh, another spy? God, they are endless. Vanessa exclaimed in exasperation, trying to search for their figures in the crowd, but they were already gone. Are they dangerous? Vanessa looked at him with worry. Edward chuckled and said, To me? They are kittens. But they are pretty dangerous to others, especially the guy. He's a bona fide sociopath. Maybe we should go to the roof. I'm going to take Ashley, and we should all get out of here. Vanessa suggested, tugging at his hand. I don't think we can anymore, Edward said flatly as he saw several burly men entering the party with rifles in their hands. On the roof, Taylor, Selina, Willa, and Ashley took some champagne from the waiter and drank it at the table, while everyone else was mingling. The bay cackled from afar, a sultry girl in each arm. Willa looked at Taylor with amazement, prompting her to ask, What? That's pretty amazing, not gonna lie. Selina laughed and added, When she told the bay off? That was pretty freaking cool. Well, Ness can do it too if she were here, Ashley said with a pout. How long is she going to take anyway? Willa didn't listen to Ashley and continued flattering Taylor. He tries to hit on you, and you turn him down with just one sentence. I'm richer than you. God, that was so pleasing to watch. A small tug appeared on Taylor's lip, and she felt that Willa wasn't that bad after all. I can't believe she's also here. Taylor became more irritable when a group of models entered her line of sight. Her eyes focused on the center, a tall girl wearing a blue dress, Barbara Palin. Mr. Ahmed checked his watch, and then nodded subtly to the burly men standing by the door. A group of muscular men entered the rooftop, each carrying a rifle. They shot into the sky, which scared all the party guests. Everyone down on the ground. One of them shouted, Kneel. Kneel on the floor now. Hands behind your back. They circled the entire crowd, pointing their guns at the guests and threatening them. One of them approached Taylor's group. All of you! Down on the ground now! Excuse me. Do you know how much this dress costs? There's no way I'm going to ruin it by kneeling on the floor, Ashley said cheekily. The terrorist was taken aback and shouted again. Do you think I'm joking? Down! Now! Hey, don't you raise your voice at us, mister, Selina said casually as she sipped her drink. Are you girls all insane? Can't you understand what's happening right now? The terrorist yelled in exasperation. Willa was petrified. She raised her hands and knelt on the floor immediately. The terrorist started moving some people downstairs, Barbara and Bay included. Yeah? Kill, threaten. But before you point your gun at me, you should know that there are deadly consequences for pointing your finger at the Queen, Taylor said, biting off the cherry. What? Are you crazy? The terrorist was really confused now. Dresa. Taylor called out, her voice quickly dissipating in the chaos. But it was enough to signal for the sniper to camp out in the next building. Bang! A clean shot penetrated the terrorist's heart. He fell to the floor, dropping his rifle, and died immediately. 6 more shots were heard, and the other terrorists on the rooftop fell one by one. Dresa, the sniper who had tried to kill Edward in Hawaii before, spoke into her intercom. The rooftop is clear. Anyone get visuals for the inside? Jean replied. Yes, we have. But it's not our concern. Cover Taylor until she gets into the chopper. Copy that, Dresa said, never losing her focus on the rooftop, not even for a second. Willa looked at Taylor with admiration now. That's so freaking cool, she shouted. In the hotel lobby, Mickey took out his gift from the silver case when the shooting started. The F-44A pulse rifle was a lightweight assault rifle featuring a rotating breech and electronic pulse action. It was designed to utilize the stock under the arm of the shooter, giving it a high rate of accuracy. The F-44A's magazine held a total of 450 rounds and boasted a high rate of fire. It was the rifle that killed the xenomorphs in Alien, Romulus. Mickey took out the rifle, and it immediately scanned the hostiles inside the lobby. He smiled as he said, "I'm not going to lose face again today." The gun fired 16 shots, killing all 8 terrorists inside the lobby who were rounding people up. Mickey even managed to stop them from placing bombs at the entry and exit points of the hotel. "Jean, what's happening upstairs?" Mickey asked solemnly. Jean replied, 8 people entered the convention hall and started shooting. Our boss rushed toward them and broke all of their arms and legs. They are all disarmed right now. They are dislegged too, Edward said through the intercom, but was met with stony silence. What? That's not funny? Mr. Ahmed, who pretended to be a hostage, herded a crowd of 10 people into the convention hall. However, as they entered, they were surprised to see their friends lying motionless on the ground. Edward dropped down from the ceiling behind the 2 terrorists, knocking them out with his fist instantly. "Oh, that was pretty easy," he said casually. While Edward was saying that, 10 black SUVs rushed to the hotel, 2 of them ramming the glass wall next to the entrance. Mickey jumped away from being hit by the car and he knocked himself out after his head hit a pillar. A small army, fully equipped with Kevlar and face masks, excited the cars and slowly made their ways up the floors. Chapter 375, Raid, Second Wave. General POV. As Edward took down the assailants in the convention hall, several people inside the room were recording him with their phones. The way he quickly disarmed the terrorists made the video seem like it was taken directly from an action movie. "Oh my God! He's like the Slayer," Sarah Michelle Gellar muttered, feeling a little envious. Edward's sharp moves, especially when he locked a guy's limb and jolted it upward, causing it to dislocate, made the crowd wince as they related to the guy's teary screams. Jason Sudeikis drank a glass of champagne quickly before saying, "I don't know what's going on. Is this fundraiser having a dinner and a show?" Edward pinned a muscular man with a goatee to the floor, wringing his arm behind his back, causing him to groan in pain. "Hey, I know you." He smiled as he peeked at the guy's face. Then he knocked him out. Suddenly, Edward turned to Vanessa and said casually, "Babe, I'm really hungry. Can you find me something to eat?" "Sure." Vanessa was taken aback at first before she went on to pick up a plate of finger sandwiches for him. Edward took out a handkerchief and wiped his hands. "So, what do you think they are here for?" Vanessa asked as she moved to stand beside him. "Hold that question for a sec. There are 2 more heading this way," Edward said before he hopped and jumped to the flagpole on top of the convention door. As the 2 other members of the gang entered the room, he dropped down and ambushed them, delivering a swift punch to the back of their heads. Their eyes rolled up, and they fell to the floor unconscious. Bayawadi rushed to Edward, holding the side of his body, and said, "Oh, thank God you're here. These sons of bitches want to bleed me dry." "Oh, so they are after you?" Edward was a little disappointed. "I thought they came here for me." Player. He got a little angry and kicked the guy who was on the floor. Bay pleaded, "You have to protect me, man. I'm going to be killed." Edward scoffed and said, "By who?" He checked out the black bag they were carrying and said, "It's bombs. But it's not active." Bay looked around, realized that he was out of danger, and then got a bit embarrassed. He immediately defended himself, saying, "There are still some guys on the rooftop. We need to get out of here." "We will." Through the rooftop, Vanessa suddenly interjected, "I guess all of them are already done for, right, Edward?" She grinned childishly as she looked upward to meet his eyes. Edward smiled before his expression suddenly turned sharp. He rushed and grabbed Mr. Ahmed's hand, choking him with the other. Bayawadi and the others were startled by his action. Bay shouted, "Hey! That's my secretary." "Oh, really? Then why is he pulling out a gun and aiming it at us?" Edward said before he gripped Mr. Ahmed's wrist forcefully. Crack! Mr. Ahmed's bones popped, and his face winced in excruciating pain. His gun dropped from his hand, and everyone saw it. He groaned and said, "H. Let me go, you freak! You have ruined my plans." "Excuse me? Who are you calling a freak, you freak?" Vanessa shouted with irritation. Barbara Pal then looked at Vanessa in disbelief, wondering where she got the nerve to confront the guy. Edward grinned slightly before turning serious again. His watch suddenly rang, and it connected to the CCTV of the hotel, showing Edward the scene in the hotel lobby. "Jean, take care of Mickey," he ordered quickly as he saw Mickey was unconscious. He turned to Mr. Ahmed and applied pressure to his neck while asking menacingly, "Did you have any other friends you were bringing to the party?" Mr. Ahmed choked and spat out with difficulty. "No. You've taken down every one of my people." "Good, then you can go to sleep now," he said, continuously applying pressure on Mr. Ahmed's neck until his brain was almost devoid of oxygen. He passed out, and Edward released his grip before he could die. "Everyone, please follow Vanessa to the roof. We don't have much time since there's another batch of these guys coming here." "A whole lot of them," Edward said to the crowd, prompting panicked murmuring. "Can't you just fight them again?" Andy Samberg yelled from afar. "Not without them killing at least one of you guys." "Do you want to volunteer to be the dead guy?" Edward asked Andy. Andy scoffed, and then shrank back slightly. "No," he muttered. "Everyone to the roof right now. Follow the instructions of my security there. They will bring you out of the hotel," Edward said, waving his arms around like an air traffic controller. People started to move around him and walked out the door. He turned to Vanessa and said, "You should go too. Jean will protect you." "Really? You're putting me through a dangerous situation again?" Vanessa asked, pouting. "Flying on a helicopter isn't a dangerous thing. It is if you don't trust them," Vanessa retorted before Edward could finish. "It's like a flying fan." "How do they even work?" she said exasperatedly. Edward rolled his eyes before turning to the side of the convention hall. "You two, Gina and Tom. The spies who came here with a plan." He called them out, pointing his index finger at them before gesturing for them to come to him. Everyone near Tom and Gina immediately retreated away from them, looking at them with malicious eyes. Tom and Gina chuckled in disbelief and approached Edward unwillingly. "As I do not have much time left, tell me about your mission, and I'll decide if I'll let you go today," he said with a cold expression. "The mission? I don't know what you're talking about." Gina abruptly took out a gun from the slit of her dress and aimed it at Edward, but he managed to kick her gun away with a roundhouse kick. Tom joined in, wanting to punch Edward, but Edward slapped him with a backhand that sent him flying at least 5 meters away. Blood trickled from Tom's mouth. The simple blow made him incredibly dizzy. As he slowly got up from the ground and turned to Edward, he saw him holding Gina by her head as she knelt on the floor, screaming in pain. "You're so tough, hitting a girl!" Gina shouted challengingly and sarcastically. Edward just gripped her head harder, prompting her to scream and say, "I was raised by Batman. My hands are rated E for everyone. So, who sent you?" He activated his Sharingan from the blind spot of the crowd. Not that anyone cared, as everyone was busy running to the roof, the bay at the front of the line, leaving only Vanessa and Barbara there. Under the hypnosis of the Sharingan, Gina begrudgingly told Edward, "I was sent here to steal your watch. I do not know who the employer is, and I only report to a middleman who's handling the missions." "Gina!" Tom was startled. Gina's life as a spy was over the second she decided to willingly give up the intel. Tom realized that the only way to save Gina's life was to kill Edward. He saw the rifle dropped from the terrorist near him and picked it up hurriedly. But suddenly, a needle penetrated his neck. Tom found himself unable to move a centimeter after that. That's neurotoxin, by the way. It won't kill you, but you won't be able to move for at least a day, Edward said casually before turning to Gina again, asking her, "Why didn't you give up the mission when I botched your plans at the beginning?" Gina said monotonously, "Because I'll die. I failed the last mission, and if I fail another, they will eliminate my status as an asset, and also my life." Tom, still able to use his mouth, continued, "It's our last mission before we can get out and live our lives together. We're planning on getting married." "Stop talking, you psychopath. I don't believe you, not even a little bit," Edward said, noticing the emotional manipulation instantly. Tom was an expert at that. Edward saw Barbara and Vanessa still loitering around and asked them hurriedly, "What are you guys still doing here? Go now. I'm waiting for you." "Aren't you going to go too?" Vanessa replied. "I'm not going. You guys won't make it if I go too. I'll act as bait for you, and I have a really strong feeling that this time, the target is me." He smiled brightly and said, "Fingers crossed. Please let me be the target this time." "Edward!" Vanessa shrieked in disbelief. Gina smiled and mumbled monotonously, "We're getting married. Tom and I. He promised me that. He said we're getting out of the job. He's lying. He lives for the gig," Edward said to Gina before turning to his friends again. "Barbara, you go with her too." I want to. But my legs are kinda weak from being held at gunpoint before, so I can't really move," Barbara said with a pathetic expression. Vanessa rolled her eyes before moving to Barbara. "It's not your attempt to have Edward's hand all over you, is it?" "No. I'm not that crazy to do that in this sort of situation," Barbara said tearfully. She couldn't move her legs at all. But Vanessa could drag her away. Before she left, Edward smiled and said to her, "Barbs, after this all settles down, we're going to have a talk about the rumor you started." Vanessa didn't stop and pulled Barbara out of the convention hall. Edward asked Gina how to get in touch with the middleman before he put her into a deep sleep. "They will kill her, you know. They won't ever let her go now that she has leaked classified information," Tom said urgently. "Then what do you propose I should do? Save her? What's in it for me?" Edward asked with a smirk. Tom tried to follow Edward's figure with his eyes, but he was already walking away. "Give me the cure. I'll bring her out of the city and save her." "Again, Tom? What's in it for me?" Edward rolled his eyes and exhaled in disbelief. "Rourke Instrument. They are the ones who put the hits on you," Tom said, much to Edward's surprise. "Oh, didn't she say you guys didn't know who the employer was?" Edward smiled with amusement while he talked to Tom. The army led by Ansel Garrick was only 2 floors away. They would be at the convention hall in less than a minute. Mr. Ahmed's eyes moved slightly. Maybe it was the oxygen getting back to his brain, or the eternal spite he had for Edward, but he was regaining consciousness at a fast rate. "I did some research of my own. I always do. Although I do not know their motive," Tom said urgently. Edward mused and thought out loud. "Maybe it's because I'm taking over the company and kicking all the shareholders out. Their former boss was a madman, you know? Again, it doesn't explain why they want to take my watch. I don't know about that. But I do know that we're not the only ones targeting you today." "Explain." Edward finally turned to Tom. "Give me the cure, and I'll explain it," Tom negotiated. Although Edward could just use his eyes to make him spit it out, Tom's adaptability in the middle of a crisis made him curious. "All right," he said before he shot another needle at Tom. In less than a second, Tom managed to regain control of his body. "Damn, I ran out of my Conan needle," Edward mumbled as he shook his watch. "I should probably put more inside than just 1 poison and 1 cure." Tom didn't try to grab the rifle again, and stood up slowly while facing Edward, raising both of his hands in the air. With a huffing voice, Tom said, "Okay. I heard some rumors about a bounty placed on your head. $1 billion bounty. It's unconfirmed rumors, but there are bound to be some people who would take the rumor at face value. Edward nodded and said, I know about that. That's not important information at all. Then do you know that in your psychological profile, it said that you're an arrogant control freak? You think of yourself as being on top of everything? So? Edward raised an eyebrow. Then what if the attacks here, all of them had different motives to let you put down your guard and shave off your resources before the final big bad appeared and swooped everything at the end? Edward's eyes lit up, and an excited grin spread across his face. So you think everything was premeditated today? It would explain why everyone decided to target the same party. Now that I've told you everything I know, I hope you will allow me to take her out of here. She's just a foot soldier. She doesn't even know that she was being used. Take her away, then, Edward said dismissively. Tom immediately ran to Gina, picking her up and putting her on his back. And Tom, Edward called out before he could leave. Tom turned around, and a small name card floated softly in front of his mouth after being thrown there. He bit the card subconsciously while Edward said, If you don't have anywhere else to go, you can find the library. That will give you the sense of purpose you're desperately searching for. Outside of the hotel, after the black SUVs rammed into the building, the reporters called the police. Rosa and Jake, who were nearby, responded to the call and joined the active shooter situation. SWAT arrived, and the police barricaded the hotel. The Vulture, Keith Pembroke from the Major Crimes Unit, became the commander of the operation. I want information on the situation inside. I want eyes on top of the building. He directed the snipers and the specialists to get into position before allowing 2 SWAT teams to enter the hotel. Boom! A huge explosion occurred from the top of the hotel, its fire lighting up the night sky. Everyone stopped abruptly and covered their heads. Rosa widened her eyes and muttered, That came from the convention floor. Ashes were falling to the ground, and a few flecks landed on her face. Jake yelled, Oh my God! Edward is dead! On top of the building, as the explosion happened, Vanessa and Barbara got into the last batch of escapees, and the helicopter was prepared to fly up when the building shook. Edward! Vanessa's eyes widened as she called his name in shock. A few minutes before, after Edward let Tom and Gina go, Ansel Garrick finally arrived at the convention hall. The army marched and formed a barricade in front of the door, aiming their lasers from their rifles at Edward's chest. Oh, come on! I'm the only one left. Do all of you need to aim your guns at me? Am I really that threatening? Edward said with a smirk. Ansel Garrick walked to the front and replied, A smiling man in the face of danger is never anything but dangerous. Edward walked slightly to a nearby chair, picked up a sliced apple, and munched it down. As he licked his lips, he said, So, why are you here, Mr. Garrick? It seems that you don't know everything that's going on, brat. Ansel chuckled with satisfaction. Edward was disgusted and said, Please don't laugh with that kind of face. Were you put through a cheese grater to have that kind of scar? A member of his gang giggled subconsciously amidst the silence. Ansel fumed and said, You're coming with us right now. And if I say no? Edward smiled childishly. Ansel grinned maniacally and said, The bounty only said to bring you there. It doesn't say whether you need to be alive or not. So you can choose right now to come willingly or in a body bag. I'm never going to go out with a man who has that kind of face. I have standards too, you know. Edward laughed mockingly. Ansel raised his rifle and shot. Brrrr. Edward didn't even move or flinch from his chair. The bullets went around him as if they were never meant to touch him in the first place. Plates shattered, chairs were destroyed, and the curtains and glass ornaments were wrecked, with shards of glass flying everywhere. As Ansel stopped his shooting spree, Edward said, Are you done playing around? Men, grab him! Ansel shouted. The militia slowly approached Edward, but before anything could happen, Mr. Ahmed rolled over and rushed out of the convention hall. A few men turned to him and immediately shot their rifles, but Mr. Ahmed managed to escape from the hall. He ran far away and hid behind a thick wall before taking out a detonator from his pocket. If I can't get my hands on that $500 million, then I'll go for the $1 billion next, Mr. Ahmed said with a maniacal grin. He had heard about the bounty spoken by Tom before while pretending to be unconscious. Mr. Ahmed pressed the detonator, and a huge explosion occurred inside the convention hall. It took out most of the militia and destroyed a large part of the hotel wall, revealing the night sky outside. For Edward, the second Mr. Ahmed ran away, he rushed to the farthest distance possible from the black bag and hid behind a pillar. After the explosion, fire spread throughout the convention hall, torching everything in its path. Ansel Garrick coughed as he slowly got up from the ground. His forehead was wounded, and only 3 of his men survived the explosion. They were standing too close to the bag. Motherphew! Before Ansel could finish, a bullet penetrated his forehead. Mr. Ahmed had picked up a gun and was executing the militia squirming on the ground one by one in cold blood. Come out, freak! I know you aren't dead yet. I don't see your body anywhere, Mr. Ahmed said as he scanned the convention hall. The fire became stronger. The SWAT teams rushed to the top of the hotel. That wraps up this part of What If Karmic Gacha system in Modern Family World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.